Hey everyone, it's Thomas. You can say hi.
I don't.
You don't have to be silent.
All right.
It's not a silent film. Thomas has very kindly brought his pair of STAX L300s, which he has fitted with STAX L500 pads, so we can confirm that they do indeed fit on the L300. And he's brought his 252S driver unit. So this is the full 3100 kit, right?
Yeah, the SRS
Yeah.
3100 kit.
So whereas if you recall, when I was in Hong Kong, they didn't offer that as a kit together. In fact, they didn't even have this driver unit in Hong Kong. So I ended up getting the 353X with the L300, and these are the stock pads. So we're going to try and answer two questions today. We're going to try and answer the question of, is there any sort of real difference that we can hear between the little baby driver unit and then this big beefy 353? And the second question we're going to ask is, do the L500 pads sound any different? How do they feel, etc., etc.? It's not going to be a super scientific test, but we'll get right into it. So I think anyone who owns a pair of L300s can testify to the terrible comfort of the stock pads.
I believe we talked about that last time we had a
Yeah,
discussion about
exactly.
STAX.
So what's nice is that we can put L500 pads on them, and you can see the difference in terms of the thickness of the L500 pad compared to the stock pad here. My prediction is that they should change the sound. Did you do much sort of comparison when you were fitting the pads on?
Not really, because my real issue was, while I love the sound of the L300 just as is, when you put them on after maybe, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, the back of my ears started really hurting, and then you sort of stop listening to them because of that.
So we got both pairs of STAX plugged into the 353, one with the stock L300 pads and one with the L500 pads.
Right. I can't remember what color I need to be at, and from memory it was red.
The brilliant Mojo's brilliant solution of using
Colors.
colored baubles for a control interface. So we got your Pioneer,
Onkyo DPX1.
Onkyo DPX1 Mojo. So what are we listening to right now, Thomas?
So right now I'm listening. Well, we're both listening to the OST of the anime, actually, Aria the animation.
Oh, you love Aria. That's right. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's that. You really like that one.
Aria's my. I won't call it a guilty pleasure because I'm not exactly ashamed of it.
But it doesn't seem like a series to be ashamed of. Like, is there any?
Yeah.
This is quite nice, actually.
It's one of the ones I turned to test with. This is a high-res one version of this album.
Yeah.
You can tell because the Mojo's gone green on the top.
Oh, great. So green is the high-res
means 96 kilohertz. The old argument of can you tell or not? I don't know.
This is a well-recorded album.
Yeah.
It's definitely really well-recorded, that's all I can say.
To be honest, the CD was also really, really well recorded.
So you want to swap now?
Yeah. At the very least, you'll find them more comfortable.
Which way it avoids us strangling ourselves to death with these cables. And how did you obtain these wonderful L500 pads?
So a friend of mine that I actually met in Earphone in Akihabara, of all places, he's from Singapore. He's the one who suggested and, as he puts it, shilled me the STAX in the first place, pointing out how much they actually did cost in Japan. I'd always just ruled out STAX because I was just like, they're too expensive, and I didn't even think about them. They were never something worth thinking about to me, so I never bothered to even try and listen to them, even when I was in Japan.
That's exactly the same thing as to me, STAX always seemed like
that
astronomical.
Sort of,
so
that huge amount, which sounds ridiculous, sort of, for me to be saying that, considering some of the other stuff that I've made.
Well, yeah, there's just
other purchases.
There are limits to everything.
Yeah, when he pointed out how much they actually cost in Japan, and this set was about 59,000 yen, which at that time was about 700 Australian dollars. And again, so I was at that point considering looking into something like an HD 800 or a K812 or an MDR-Z1R. So, I'm looking at some pretty expensive headphones. And suddenly, the L300, even with the so-called pleb STAX, so much cheaper than all these other things I was looking at. Almost half price. Well, actually, half price of some of them. And, standing
you get the whole
toe-to-toe.
kit and caboodle,
Yeah,
you get the
I don't need another amplifier or something.
The only thing that kind of throws a spanner in the works, and I guess we're going to kind of test this out, is that the amp only really works with the STAX, right?
Yeah.
And
well, strictly speaking, it's not an amplifier. They're not amplifying the signal that's fed to them.
what are they doing?
The electrostatic headphones work by generating a very, very high voltage difference across either side of this thin membrane, charged membrane, and then you feed the audio signal into that high voltage differential. And that makes the statically charged membrane vibrate in time to the music. And
I understood voltage. Rather than increasing something by gain, you're saying that it creates a difference in...
So essentially it's there to provide the charge. That's why they call them energizers or driver units. It's there to provide the voltage bias so that... I've got to go back to how electrostatics work. So electrostatics work by a very, very thin film mounted in between two plates, two metal plates in this case. Well, it's a metal sort of mesh. And that film has a coating on it that means it has a static charge. And when you put a very high voltage across those two metal plates on either side of it, and then you put your sound signal into that voltage, you can make that membrane vibrate in time to, well, for the music. That the vibrations is what we hear. And the idea of that is because this thin membrane can have very, very little mass, it's exceedingly light, it can move at a much faster and match frequency responses compared to the cone you see on a dynamic driver or the little sort of plate that you get inside a balanced armature driver sort of thing. So it's actually a similar concept to a planar magnetic, except it's using an electrostatic field instead of a magnetic field.
Okay, so what would you say? What do you think that there are differences between these two pads?
If there are, they're not so noticed. They're not like night and day, because I would have immediately noticed when I first put on the L500 pads. To me, it still sounded like the STAX I love.
I like, and I don't know if it's also possibly variation between these two units, but I kind of like the sound a little better, and I think it sounds just a little bit warmer, and I think it might just be that these pads, because they're thicker, they seal better.
Yeah, definitely getting a better seal, and then even then, there's going to be a difference between us due to how our glasses frames are different.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the sound's worse.
Yeah.
All right, well let's compare the amplifiers. No,
Driver
the
units.
energizers. So Thomas chooses the track. I'll just say briefly what we're going to do. We're just going to use Thomas's pair of L300s with the L500 pads, and we're going to swap between the 353 and the 252. Now, obviously, a scientific test would involve volume matching them at 1 kilohertz, but the setup of that is not within our grasp in today's time. Like I could blindfold Thomas and then I plug it in and out, but unless we have the same volumes, he's going to know when I'm plugging it into the same amp again, unless he doesn't know which one he starts out with.
Well, the problem is with that is it's been proven that people think louder sounds better.
Yeah. As long, if the volumes aren't matched, the volume it's a bit. I tend to find that I listen at a higher volume than, say, you or Sean, but a lower the volume than what I observe a lot of people at Minidisc doing.
Yeah.
Which is like they wear closed headphones and then
You can hear it.
you can still hear it. I think it's also if you go to a lot of concerts, your hearing's... I'm boring. I don't go to many concerts, so maybe that's why
I do, but I use musicians' earpods.
Yeah, that's the other solution.
I have to remember what I was dialed to. Hang on, can I just find a good listening volume, and just so we have a number?
Yep.
Let's say 3. Yeah, roughly 3.
Okay.
Okay, cool. See, honestly, I'm also
One,
at
two,
about
three.
three.
Yeah, that's 3 notches on both, so that's sort of helpful. The only thing that I've read in terms of a comparison between both of these energizers is that someone pointed out that they sound quite similar, almost identical, at normal listening volumes, but when you turn them up, then the smaller one starts to sound like it's just distorting.
It's hard because I can't just unplug and go rapidly. There's a forced downtime between the two.
Well, we can just destroy the headphones.
I
Well, okay, the other thing we could have done is we'd had the same pads on both the L300, and then that way we could swap between them.
Yes,
the
had-
only
had I-
risk
had
is
I-
that the unit variation between
had
the
I
two...
thought about that, I would have brought my L300 pads, but
But, well, obviously then it's not big enough. It's not a big enough difference to your ears that...
I don't want to say what I'm thinking yet because that'll
Okay.
affect
Yep,
what
yep,
you
yep, yep,
when
yep.
you get to it.
See,
That's
we're trying to be as
I've had my
methodical.
well.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to say I can hear a difference because I know how much of it like is because I can't volume match. I mean, I think I can hear a difference, whether that's from the fact that I haven't volume matched properly, or I'd need a lot more time.
But luckily I'm not held back by that
Impulsive and
constraint
rash.
because I can I'm very happy to be wrong. People will let me know if I'm wrong, or even if I'm not wrong. So I will give this a go. What I reckon I'll do is I'll use my Khan and I'll pick a song track that isn't weeb trash. No, it isn't. It is something that I'm more familiar with.
Quiet you.
So what I will go with is
I'm curious,
Chrome
actually,
Country.
what volume level you're going to go for.
by One O Tricks Point Never.
Oh, I should point out I was listening to Tachyon by Nanoripe, if that means anything to people.
It doesn't mean anything to me, but it might mean something else to your fellow weeb scum.
That one wasn't even a tie-up to anything.
I'm gonna stop at 3 as well. In fact, for this track, I'm gonna go lower than that because that sounds dangerous. I'm gonna go 2 because this track seems very loud.
Well, actually, we can't make the comparison anyway because we've plugged in something completely different. And I think if you're on line out on the Khan, you're going to be higher than what I was at on the
Oh,
Mojo.
yeah.
It's just a microphone, another pair of headphones.
Yeah.
Not that people aren't well aware that you just have headphones everywhere.
Even 2 on both of these, I think this is louder. This feels louder than that one.
Yeah, that's the bit where I wonder whether it's like, is it like just because that one's louder that I'm feeling that it's the case? Would I have...
Okay, yeah, because personally, I'm not picking up an overwhelming difference between the two that I would say, no, that's definitely not because they're different volumes, like you said, right? Like this, to me, this maybe sounds a little fuller, but it might be just a little louder.
That's the... it's like, it does sound a bit fuller, there's a little bit more bass response, but again, I can't say it's from volume, and it's not so night and day.
I mean, realistically speaking, this amp alone is worth almost as much, if not more, than the total package cost of the 3100 system, like the 252 and the L300, right?
What the...
Because this works out to be like somewhere close to 900 Australian, and these two are like 1200 Australian.
I think it's 1300 Australian for this.
1300, yeah. Like I'm not in terms of like
check.
I'm not hearing that kind of difference in the sound, but part of the reason why I thought it was a good idea to get the 353, apart from the fact that 252 wasn't available in Hong Kong, was the idea that, well, at least if I ever go up to the L700, then it won't be like I've attached a... I know this is sort of like the audiophile trap way of thinking, but I won't have attached like a horse-drawn carriage to a Ferrari or something. Like,
well, I've got friends who think that the 353 is the best sounding driver unit out of the whole lineup.
Which is funny. Like, I bought it with no knowledge of like, but at that point in time, there was no real like comparisons I could hear of. Now I hear that the 353 is very popular. All I can say is that comparing these two, it doesn't necessarily make me think oh, I was an idiot to buy the 353, but at the same time, it's not like I don't feel in any way like this is just. I don't know. It's really hard without the volume matching. It's really the volume matching. Yeah, there's no way if you had both on 3 that they would have been the same volume because the 353 is louder at the same indicator.
Well, again, it may also be down to what it's being fed in at levels being fed in as well.
Yeah, if there was a difference, I'm gonna say if there was a difference between these two, I'm not really hearing it in the highs or anything like that. It's just maybe the bass is a little fatter on the bigger amp. But I always like to. I have a theory. Honestly, I have this theory about audiophiles and these kind of things is that the physical dimensions of a thing will lead people to make subjective interpretations of the sound that they hear from it.
I know that feeling when I looked at the new series of DAPs from Onkyo and Pioneer. They make a smaller one, so there's a DPX1 and DPX1A, same size, and then they make a smaller one they call the Onkyo one is the rubato. And when I picked one up, because it doesn't have that metal unibody, it was so light and it just felt so cheap in the hand. And it on paper, before I picked one up, it looked really appealing because it was small, it had the balanced out, it had the SD card, and it was, actually it is cheaper. And so I really wanted to like it because that way I could have a smaller player. And then, I don't know, because I've gotten so used to carrying such a heavy player around, I picked up something so light and it just felt wrong. And I'm not sure whether if I'd actually truly sat down and listened to them side by side, whether I would actually feel that, the rubato sounded that much worse. But the fact that just holding it in my hand, I didn't feel as nice about it, purely because of weight.
So what would you say is your opinion? What are your feelings now? Not even your...
I don't regret having gone with the 252. There's a small part of me that wants to really sit down with them for a long enough period of time and actually do the volume matching and really have a just sit down and actually concentrate on whether, there is a difference sort of thing, and whether that difference is worth forking out for a 353. Because there's always that bit of you that wants
there to
upgrade.
Look, my kind of takeaway from this is I definitely wouldn't. I'm not. There's nothing that's blowing me away in terms of these differences. I definitely feel like, if there was any difference, it would be a very small difference in the kind of depth of the bass. But even then, I really couldn't say if that's a volume matching issue or just a bias, kind of like a confirmation bias. But
you can't help but expect the 353 to sound better because
you can't help but expect it just physically. Look at these two things here. Look at them. But it's definitely not like I'm not looking at this and going, well, this is like $1,000, and this thing's like, a little Lilliputian kind of thing. And if anything, this actually makes me more interested in, because I'm kind of weighing up my options about what to do with the STAX. Because I don't use it as much as I would like. One of my options is to sell the 353 and, get one of these. And that would be fine, and I wouldn't feel so guilty about having the whole setup because the total sunk cost would be lower. The other opposite direction is, I think, well, maybe if I got an L300 one day, I'd want to have all this. So, I don't know. But the conclusion basically is, to me, that I'm not particularly... The outcome doesn't particularly fuss me either way.
Yeah, I'm not...
Easy for me to say because I had the...
Yeah, I'm not about to go out and rush out and buy a 353, put it that way. I'm still very happy with the performance of the 252.
All right. Well, with that said, Thanks, Thomas, for helping me out. And we will let us know in the comments what you think. Bye.